we're about to start, everyone, in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hello my lovelies, so I'm Lizzie from From Lizi, and today we are bringing you a fun fold using our really cute Baked with Love card kit. I'm just double checking that my phone isn't going to go mental while we're playing. Now, we have so far, since release, this is how my kit is now looking. I do have my little embellishment pieces separate, but we have given this kit a real good going. These are all the cards that I've made so far. I have added a little bit of extra white cardstock, but let me run you through these. So the first thing we did last week was a one sheet wonder, and I'm just going to show you these really quickly. This has got that glaze over the top, which really helps with it being a glass dome. So those are the 4 that we made in the one sheet wonder, which I think look really special, even though this one was a mistake. I did a wrong cut, so it just shows that you can make anything work if you've got the right attitude. And then this was 10 cards in 20 minutes. Now, I did fail. So my fail rate is 75% and my success rate is 25. However, these, all right, Liam's having fun with the cameras already. So these we made, and the bare bones of the card were roughly made, very roughly made, within 20 minutes. I did add some black cardstock. There isn't any black cardstock in this kit. And I did add a few extra little peel-offs, like the mini butterflies and the mini circles. But these with the hearts, they were in the kit. Yes, and little bits of decoration here and there were added from outside. Look at the spatula. How cute is that? And yes, so now we have actually got 14 cards, which is more than I made with. They are now available. So if you didn't manage to quite catch the kit, you can get the extra pieces. Now, we are going to make a fun fold with this lovely kit. Now, I have got an idea of what I want to make, but we're going to be winging it a little bit. I certainly have not done a dry run of this. So, but it's going to be an accordion card. So, now from my kit, I have got left the strips of blue and pink, a bit of the apricot and the white cardstock, because I used all of the lilac on the panels for my my one sheet wonder, and then I used a lot of the pink and the blue in the 10 cards in 20 minutes. So I'm going to be a little bit cheaty. I really hope you'll forgive me, but because your kits haven't actually been sent yet, I'm hoping this will give you the opportunity that if you decide to recreate what I'm making, that you pick what you believe is your favourite combination. So I'm just going to bring in some additional coloured cardstock, that's all. I'm not going to be cheating too hard. So these are the scraps that I have left over, and these are all of the sheets that I have after the 14 cards that we've made. And I think I am going to use this one. This is one of my favourites. I love clean and simple. And because this is white with these super cute accessories with just the tiny little smattering of gold, I'm going to use this one. And because it is white, it would actually go with any of the coloured cardstock, but I think, let me just show you how I mean that. So this is the lilac, and I think it looks really pretty over top of that. The fuchsia, and the blue. And I think we're going to go with the blue. The purples are a must. Should I use purple today? I can use purple today. Let's go with what's voted for. So, regular sheet of cardstock, and I'm going to cut it at 5.5 inches lengthways. So usually we would, you know, put it in half to, no, this way. So it's going to be tall and there's extra card. So measuring it up at 5.5, chopping. Don't throw that away. I'm going to keep that. In fact, let's do the chopping on that now. So this is 11 inches and I want a 6-inch piece. Now I can't be dealing with getting the leg out, so I know that if I cut 5 inches off the bottom, that the piece that I'm cutting away is in fact 6 inches. So I'll do that. I'll keep this because I don't throw anything out. So these are the card pieces of our base. Now, pop this to one side for now, along with the pattern paper. Now, my scoring, I am going to find my bone folder and I'm going to score this at, she says, 1 3/4 from top to bottom, 3.5, and 5.25, and then at 7. So how am I going to do this? My scoreboard finishes at just before 7. So if it's 7, 1, 2, 3, 4 inches from the other end. There's nothing like not doing the dry run, is there? Okay, so we have 1 3/4, 3.5, 5.25, and 7. They are the score lines. Now we're going to create the accordion. So, fold, 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 fold. And then we're going to give a burnish so that they are nice. And now, I've made an error here and I'm going to show you it so that you know not to do it. When you are scoring, fold so that you have the mounting on the inside. I scored all of those in the same direction and then I folded them on the opposite, and what will happen is your cardstock will break. We're all going to pretend it didn't happen and I'm going to carry on, but when scoring, do double check that you have scored both sides so that your paper doesn't break. It is also super, super dry here. Super, super snowy. That's the point. How many of you are snowed in? How many of you have had the best excuse to be crafting all day? Actually, before we pop the scoreboard away, this is the 6-inch piece that was the offcut, and I'm going to score it at 3. Now take note. Fold into the mountain. And now we have no issue. And it looks lovely on the inside. We have that lovely raised part. So these are our bases, and we are going to attach like this so that it can open up like that. I hope that makes sense. So I'm going to use this really super cute patterned paper to essentially cover over these 4 panels. Now, each of these panels is 1 3/4. If you measure along, you'll see they're 1 3/4. So you get to decide how much space you want to have around each of the edges. Now, if we want to have all of these pieces of pattern paper equally shared, we need to cut them at 1.5 and then centre them. So let's do that. If I can get out my trimmer. So 1.5 inches, and I'm going to be conscious about the pattern so that it keeps in sequence, because that, I think, makes it look really pretty. So that's the first one. There you come, one. And then another one at 1.5. And then this at 1.5. And then we have our last piece. So there are our cut pieces. Now, when I pop that into the centre there, that is a really lovely border around my pattern paper. I'm just going to use my pencil and by eye mark on here a little notch, and then I'm going to measure that notch and I'm going to trim that off of the bottom of all of the others. Now, what I can do is provide, having done this, I can provide all of the measurements. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, oh gosh. So that's 13/16, I think. Help me out, I'm gonna go on the close-up camera if anyone wants, I'm pretty sure. So there's my little pencil mark. And I'm sure it's what, there's 16, isn't there, in an inch? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, yes, 13/16 needs to come off of the bottom. Gosh, so, am I gonna get away with it this way? Is it too short? It's gonna be too short, isn't it? Okay, 13/16, which is that little line on my trimmer. So I'm going to pop all of these pieces of pattern paper back in, and I could have trimmed this bottom, this 13/16 of an inch off before we started, and that would have made more sense, but how often do I make sense? And I'm trying to keep them in their position and the correct way up as well. Oh, I've forgotten which. This is all very technical, as you can see. Okay, last one. There. Okay, so these pieces are now snipped. I'm going to keep those because they are pretty and you never know. And I'm going to dry fit them in just to make sure. And I think they're going to look really very pretty. And I think the choice of purple was definitely a good one. But yes, so that's how that's going to look. Let's pop some glue in. Okay. So putting a very, very small amount of wet glue and centering that into that fold, working along the accordion. In the ideal world, I would have made one of these beforehand, so at the beginning of the video you could have seen what we were going to make, but as is, we have had a very busy weekend, which is both brilliant, and then you feel like you need another weekend afterwards, don't you? So, as we know, we're not going back to England. We have been, I think I mentioned at the very beginning of the year that I had a list of goals and objectives that we were going to make real waves towards achieving. And because we're now not going back to England, some of those things have been pulled forward on the calendar, which is very exciting. Right, so now, as you can see, this is how we're going to look. So I need to have an insert, and I am just going to use a piece of white cardstock for that, if I have any to hand. No, that is a piece of specialty. What do we have here? Yes, there we go. Oh, that's actually a card base. Oh, we can't use that. We certainly can't use that. Right. So it's going to essentially just be ever so slightly smaller. So we're going to jump in and out and mark. And then I will try to give you the measurements. Let's trim this. Because once it's cut, it will be much easier to confirm the sizing. Okay. 1, 2. So here is now my panel, which will sit very nicely in the middle. And when it closes, that will look very tidy as well. In fact, I am going to trim ever such a slight bit more off of the side here, just to give it that very equidistant border. Yeah, that feels nice. I prefer the look of that. So, the measurements for your inside panel are, oh my gosh, me and the not proper numbers, 3 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 11 sixteenths, 3 and 11 sixteenths, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and an eighth. I did that one well. 5 and 1/8. So that is going to go in there. Now, I had worked on using a blue, but we can always pivot. It's always a good thing to keep it different, but I'm going to need to find a very pretty lilac ink. So I'm going to grab my cheat sheet, and I think the shaded lilac is going to work really well. So now I've just got to try and find it. I have been told that there are labels now which are available, which I'm very excited at the prospect of, because trying to find what I'm looking for not always particularly easy. Now, Liam's going to get cross with me because I've moved my chair, so I'm probably not in focus anymore. Sorry. Okay, shaded lilac. Let's get our stamp out. Oh, I've made it into such a mess here. I've only been here 10 minutes. Okay, right. So, kit bag, stamp set. And I am going to use one of our sentiments in the middle, I think, or, oh, should we stamp our sentiments? Oh, decisions. Well, I know that I want to decorate this piece of card with some of our little tiny tools, not quite tools, kitchen aids, let's call them. So, shaded lilac. And I'm just going to, around the edges particularly, twist and stamp. Trying not to be too regular. And I also have a decision to make as to whether or not I want them to show once it's closed. And you know what? I think I am just going to keep them. No, let's not. Let's do the sides as well, so that they can all be visible. And I'm not making sure that I've got great coverage. This is to be sort of a background, not intense. And let's have a little wipe. So, next we're going to use the whisk. And you could change colour ink here if you want. I would suggest keeping it to the more pastel-y light tones so that it doesn't take away from the front, you know, the what's going on centre front. Let's make sure that there is a little bit more ink than just that. And yeah, slightly going off the edges to make it look organic. Also probably would have been a good idea to put my messy mat down, but here we are. And I think now I'm going to move across to the little spatula as the final. There are obviously the little cupcakes and the cherries and the strawberries, so it doesn't have to be the utensils that you use. Okay, and now I used the smallest last. I started off with the largest, which was the piping bag, then went across to the whisk, and now I'm using the spatula, and I'm just going to fill in any little gaps because it's so much easier. Oh gosh, I've got ink on my fingers now. That didn't take long, did it? Using the smallest stamp last does mean that you can just fill in those small gaps without it being too intense or looking like you're trying to fill in the gap. Does that make sense? So along this edge there is a smaller display than here, but I am actually quite happy with that. I think that looks a little bit more organic, and when the card is closed, it will not overpower from the front. It will just give that little hint. And what you could also do is use a very small blending brush, like, you know, the tiniest of weeniest of ones, like this sort of size, and just take a very small smudge and just blend over the top, just to smudge them in a little bit. It's a different look, but it might be something that you fancy giving a go to. So we now have this little hand stamped panel that can go in here, and then once we have our accordion on, so that still works and it doesn't look as though we have the piping bag that's sort of creeping behind, but otherwise there is still a nice border around the edge of that frame there. So, ta-da. Right, so this I'm going to glue in as well now, because, and I may stamp a sentiment in here still, I may not. We'll have to, you have to leave space to be able to write on the inside. The thing with the fun fold is they're all well and good, but you need to make sure that you're actually able to use it as a card still. And it's very easy to get caught up in the stamping element and then think, oh, there's nowhere to write, and then you end up having to write it on the back or something, which if you put a panel on, that also works fine. But and it's up to you, because when this is displayed on a mantle, it will stand like this. It won't stand, you know, like a regular card. The accordion will make it want to stand up, so you almost have to have double the real estate on the mantelpiece. So perhaps you would prefer to have just a really lovely big piece of ephemera there that just takes centre stage, and then pop exactly the same piece of white on the reverse to put a more personal greeting. It's up to you. I'm leaving this to your judgment, but now let's do our panel here. So we're going to need some white. Thankfully, I have some here. Alternatively, you could use another piece of pattern paper, and perhaps this would be a really good opportunity to assess our scrap situation, just in case, because we have now made a few cards, and you see this pink would fit really well, But is it going to overpower? I don't think so. I like the idea of keeping the papers on the very simple level, simply because the card in itself is so fancy. Now, this one could work very well because the motifs are so tiny weeny and they won't take away from anything that you put on top. But I think I'm going to go with white. I'm going to save my lovely pattern papers to fight another day. I'm just going to tuck those in here. Oh, and that piece. And I'm going to use white. So, what do we have? Yes, if we trim this in half, this is, oh gosh, 5 7/8. So that's 2.5, that's 7/8 divided by 2. Are you going to help me? No, he's not, he says. No. Do it yourself, silly woman. Okay. So that needs to be, that would be, oh, this notch here added on to 2.5. So am I talking 2 15/16? I think I am. Let's try it. 2 15/16. Gonna look silly if I'm wrong. 2 and, yeah, I got it right. Oh, that makes me feel good. Sorry that you're having to watch me do maths. That's not fun for anyone. So 2 15/16. I need to do that on both sides to make sure that I have a true square. Yes, there's one. And 2 15/16. Lovely. Okay. So now when we reintroduce, oh gosh, I am actually going to trim those further because there's not enough of a border. So I'm going to take off, after all of that maths, I'm going to take it down to 2 3/4. Yeah, 2 3/4 on both sides. That's a nice number, isn't it? 3/4. And then that way that will sit and we will still have that really pretty purple border. Yes, that's the way to do it. Not the way I did it, trying to work out. Yes, was brought up with metric. I'm learning. I feel like I understand the concept, but it still feels like I have to have a math lesson to work anything out. Okay, so now I have 2 lovely pieces. So it's up to us. We can now decorate as we see fit, which we have our lash girls. Oh, look, aren't they lovely? We could pop a lash girl here with a sentiment, and then we could have a lovely big cake. We could have the cake stand. Now you can have accessories hanging over, but let me give you a forewarning. You cannot have anything hanging over this edge or this edge. So you can have it hanging like that, but if you have an overhang on this one, bear in mind that when it closes, that is going to be showing. So I think having an overhang is great if you've got reversible images. These aren't quite, but they're not far off. So we could stick 2 of these back to back, and then if we had it hanging over, it wouldn't be too sad. But anyhow, I really like the idea of having one of our little chef ladies on the front. And then perhaps a cake. Oh my gosh, I'm flicking it everywhere. Put those back. And we've also got all the pots, flowers. I'm going to do a flower card because I love the flowers in this. And we could actually even put her with a cupcake, and then it could be the big apron on the inside. No, I'm going to stamp her with a sentiment, and then I'm going to pick between the cake and the apron for the second piece. So let's choose a sentiment that's going to fit nicely. And one of the ways I like to choose my sentiment is laying her where I think she's going to look best, and then holding the acetate over the top so that you can see how it's going to work. And I think Sweet as Can Be will look really pretty. So I'm going to use that. I'm going to use my Misty because I haven't used this stamp yet. And I want to make sure that we get a really lovely crisp impression. I'm going to put it down in that bottom corner there. And pick that up, double checking that it's straight. And it looks straight enough. I'm going to VersaFine, sorry. And as I say, this is the first time I'm using it, so I could have put Versamark on first, just to make it a bit sticky. Make sure this cardstock is pushed right into that bottom corner. And Kiss, I'm using a fingertip press because it's quite a nice detailed sentiment. We don't want too much ink to splodge over the sides. And I'm just going to kiss a little bit more ink onto the stamp. Make sure it's encouraged right in there. And then again, that fingertip press. Wipe, wipe. It's just a stamp chamois. I don't like using baby wipes because I find they leave fibres. It's nice the whole knowing that it's definitely super clean. And if you looked at that thing, if I got it out of there, you'd be disgusted because it's covered in so much ink. But I wring it out and wash it in the sink, and it's obviously somewhat stained, but I don't have any sort of detergent on it. Water, as long as you do it straight away, will clean your stamps really nicely. Now I'm going to do something that I have seen so many people do, and it looks so pretty, and I'm a little bit scared, but I'm going to do it anyway. And that is, I'm going to take a black liner. Now this is the Memento, and I'm going to show you on the back of this, there's a brush end, which you can draw these really cute, non-uniform lines with. It looks a bit doodly. So I'm going to try and do some doodly lines. So I'm playing with fire here, especially with live, but something that I have seen done many, many times is sort of a wiggly line with a couple of dots and then a twist and then a line, dot, dot, line. And it's not uniform. It's not like one great big line all the way along. The dots are all in different spots. But I really do enjoy this look, and I can't do a straight line to save my life. But that's part of the organic look to it. And I think with this font sentiment that it works really nicely. A little bit more. There we go. And I think that's just sort of framed it a little bit. I could have taken a little bit more time and care, but I'm going to be grateful that that came out as it did, and I'm going to run. But this, obviously I've just used a VersaFine ink, and this is Memento ink, but I think that's done the job really nicely. It just puts a little frame around it so that I can pop her in. And if I wanted to put a tiny cupcake or macaroon, should we give her a couple of little macaroons to hold? Because we have all different colours. We pop her up ever so slightly more, we can have a little tower of macaroons, and they match her apron, which all looks obviously very pretty. So let's have a look. Sweet as Can Be. I mean, if macaroons were that size in real life, like, that would be a very happy day. But now, of course, I have got her going over the edge of my panel. You see her leg? And that was a no. So I'm going to have to pull her in or twist her so that she's more flying, a flying cake maker. But yes, she can hang over the top. She can hang over this side. But if she hangs over this side, we will see it from the other. So I think we're going to go this way. And I think we're just going to have 2 macaroons, perhaps. Or should we pop that one at the back? Yeah, okay, let's do that. Now I'm going to use, this is, it's called a jewel pick, I think. Yes, jewel pick. And it's just, I don't know why, but it's ever so slightly sticky. So when you're wanting to position things, it makes it much easier. So now I know where I want these to go. I am going to press and seal is another thing that you can use at this point, but I'm going to use a piece of tape. Of course, I've moved them all now. Let's get these how I want them to look. I think having them slightly staggered and then one poking out of the top and there being something of a jaunty angle to them helps. Now I'm going to use a low tack tape on the front. Now I can take these away. I know that this one I'm going to want to have stuck down flat because that's the back one. So that one gets glue. These two I'm going to want to lift ever so slightly. So I'm going to use foam squares for them. So I just use a tiny one on that end, another on the far end, and then I'm going to lay one across the middle of the 2 at the front because that also adds that little bit of stability. So now that I have them, I can remove my backing. If they were overlapped more at the front, I would suggest sticking them down a bit into each other. But now that I move the tape, the macaroon goes as well, but there we are. So here we have the little macaroon at the back and the 2 lifted up on foam. So I am going to lift our lash girl with my thin tape, my thin foam, my scissors. So she's a little bit skinny she's not a true baker. That was something my mum always used to joke and say, you never trust a thin cook. Now, I'm not going to go too high because I know that her head pops off and I don't want to have adhesive hanging off the back. Her feet needs to be inside, so I think she's going to go like that, and I do need to remove a bit more adhesive from the back of her just to make sure that she doesn't try and stick where she shouldn't be. So let's get the scissors back in here. The other thing that I can do, which actually I'm going to, because otherwise it might make a hot mess on the back of her, is use anti-static powder tool. So if you, like me, enjoy a bit of heat embossing, you will have some sort of powder available, and it can just be talcum powder, like baby powder, because you don't want the errant and static here particularly. Oh my goodness, we have so much static. And putting the baby powder on the reverse side will just stop those sneaky naughty little bits of embossing powder being where they're not supposed to be. But they're also great for de-staticking. De-staticking? I don't think that's a word. I think they made that up. Stopping static from being an issue. Now you could, of course, have stuck your panel anti-static. Yes, thank you, dear. You could have stuck your panel on here first, but if you'd have done that, it would have been difficult to manipulate from the back. So her foot can hang over the smallest amount because of the purple, but most of her I want to be within the bounds of the white. So she's got, look, the tiniest of little nook there. Now I'm going to turn it over, and there is actually only a very small amount, but I'm going to take my, and I've had this one for like 100 years now, it feels like. And I'm just going to take the top off because I don't want to damage all my bristles. And there are lots of the, oh, there we go. I think that might be enough, but I've just dumped all over the back of it. And then you just sort of tap it in. And now there is no stick to that whatsoever. I'm just going to tap that off over the bin. But that's not in the least bit sticky now. And so when we come to attach that down, yeah, really cute. So sweet as can be. There. So now we need to decide on what's going to go on this side. Now, let's dry fit our cake and our apron to see which it is we prefer. Now we have already got the macaroons, so I think the apron. I think the apron looks better. So, and again, you could use this for your sentiment because this is on sort of the inner fold, but it will be visible when it's gifted and on the mantle. So I'm going to do the same as I did just a minute ago with my memento and hope that because it went so well with that one, that it's going to be nice with this one. And I'm just going to do a very loose line, dot, 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 line, dot, 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 line. Oh my gosh, I'm better at the drag than I am at the pull. So I'm going to do that again, going this way. Yeah, and this, again, is something that I have seen done and never really been brave enough, I suppose. But you will make me brave. So hopefully this is something that you would try. You have to like the organic. It's not something if you like right angles and clean corners. But it's kind of worked. That corner's gone a little bit skewy, so maybe we could, maybe we will put, maybe we'll hang our, there isn't really the option, never mind. But we'll put it into a corner that it's not important. And then that one can go here. This one can go here. And I think we can start attaching. We'll use the same depth foam behind the apron as we did on the macaroons. And we'll just pop one in the middle because we don't want it to sag. And perhaps, there we go. Okay, so I'm going to wet glue the front onto here. Get that into place. There we go. And then I'm going to do the same with this one. While they are drying, I'm going to pop the foam pieces off of the back, and then we will get that stuck down there. And this is the time when I'm going to get the peel-offs that came in the kit. If I can find them, here we go. Oh. And I'm just going to, these are on hand. In fact, I'll just use my fingers. Just pop in a few hearts, and I'm just going to twist them ever so slightly. Oh, that's messed with my OCD. I've taken that from the wrong spot. Means I'm going to have to use all of them now. And then I'm just using the smaller ones as little, it's almost just like little confetti, because it is baked with love. It's more convincing when there's hearts, isn't it? Or sweet as can be. Right, and we'll do the same over here. Pop one. And the rule of 3 is great to try and keep in mind, because in fact I'm going to try and get away with the big one. I think over by the apron there is just that little bit more space, and I will go in with another teeny tiny one just so that it doesn't look too regular. Oh, and now it's 2, 2, 2, 2. Not following the rules. So we will pop an extra tiny one right there. Okay. So I absolutely love our Love From Lizi peel-offs. So as I say, these are the brand new ones. These are the violet mini hearts that come in the kit. So we are very nearly there, my lovelies. So what we're going to do is we're going to close our card up and we're going to dry fit where we're supposed to sit. So I'm going to bring her down a little bit because she's got her lovely big hair at the top. Don't want her to feel like she's too high up. And then from this position, I'm going to just open it. And along this edge, wet glue. You don't have to be, you know, hard on the edge, but the closer you keep it to the edge, the easier it will find itself on when it's standing up. It needs to have a little bit of movement. Now, I'm just going to sit here and hold this for a few seconds because I really want that to connect well. I don't want it to shift as soon as we open it. And now that that's had a few seconds of connection, I'm going to open it up and do exactly the same thing as before. Hold my fingers here, keeping that accordion closed. And as you can see, we can see the waste bits, but once it's actually stuck, they're not going to hang out too much. And I'm going to do exactly the same as I just did on the other side. Just put a bead of glue along that top to bottom edge, keeping it right over, and then doing the same again, closing it, and I'm just going to hold my fingers over where that glue is. So, press, press, press. Now from this angle, yes, we can see her, we can see her hair, but now that when it's from the front, her hair is actually protecting, and then when we open it, ta-da! How cute is that? So it's going to stand on the mantle, as I say, like this. So you could be well within your rights to pop another piece of ephemera, or a bunch of flowers and a little note. But do bear in mind, if you're going to write anything, make sure you write behind the piece that gets hidden. So at least when you get it out of the envelope, because otherwise anything that you put on, you are going to see to a degree. But I would suggest that it would be nice to put, you know, happiest of birthdays, or stamp another sentiment, or even stamp some more of your imagery, or colour in the lash girl to be like the recipient, you know, their hair colour and skin tone, and yeah, customise the pinny or the scales with some really fun pun, like, gosh, there's nothing like putting myself on the spot, is there? But scaling up for your birthday, I don't know. That's terrible. I'll get back in my lane. Right, so this, my lovelies, is our fun fold for Baked with Love. And we've used one sheet of pattern paper. We've used some of our itty bitty ephemera pieces and one of our lash girls, one of these really super cute aprons, which also, oh, I wish I'd have thought of this before. We could just cut a tiny little slit in the, I'll do that on the next one, and then we can tuck a rolling pin or one of the little whisks in it. We'll do that. But anyhow, thank you ever so much for sticking with me till the end. I really hope that you like this. And as you can see, that's how it will look when it's standing up. Of course, you can only see it from the top. But, now, so he does this again, but it's not standing. We'll be back Thursday evening. We have our colouring with the Wicked Witches. So we're going to be making a card or two, but we're going to colour in our Dorothy and Friends and Wicked Witches stamps. And we're going to have, yeah, just some fun. I think we're going to use Olo markers on one set and Copic markers on the other, just so that there's variety depending on which pens you may have. Also, I will offer the comparison. So if I use Copic, I will offer Olo alternatives for those colours and vice versa, because on the Wicked Witches sets, it's pinks and greens, whereas on the Dorothy and Friends, we've got a lot of blues and reds and lots of different tones. So I hope you can join us for that. And we've got another design team video coming up very soon. That's on Friday. So we've had 2 now. We will be doing a full design team announcement. We have got a new team members, which we're really excited to share with you. And we will be shipping on Monday. So if you wanted to add any orders to your add-on kits, to your boxes, please make sure we have those by the 31st. And then we will be getting your kits out to you early next week, so you can make something just as cute as I have today. So until next time, please make something beautiful. Bye.